again, just to pitch it some more and really trigger interest in the full film.
Yeah.
Because we've had the trailer out there for a couple months, but now that we have the full film out there, we want as many people as possible to watch it. But let's go back to, once again, to the planning of the film, the putting together of kind of the layout of how you envisioned as the director of this film being displayed and shown to the viewing audience. I'm interested, I don't even know this myself, but did it ever take a turn as far as how you wanted to communicate the story of Don Wildman, the story of the culture war? Did it ever take a turn as far as like how to deliver that message? Or when you went into it 3-4 years ago, you know, you had your idea of this is how I wanted to portray the film and Don Wildman, and then that theme stayed consistent throughout. Tell me about kind of this struggle over how to display and how to show the life of Don Wildman.
Yeah, the idea behind making a movie, the way that I explain it to people is it's a lot like building a building and writing a book at the same time, because you're interacting with so many different people, collaborating with a lot of others. You're doing a lot of detailed research and a lot of time just kind of grinding through the work on your own. And yeah, there was a point when the movie kind of took a turn. I mean, I wanted it to feature a lot of archival footage because I knew that would just communicate so much about the era, get Don in his own words and all of that. But when we started working on this project, Walker, I mean, we didn't have all that footage.
Right,
so,
because you're talking 70s and 80s.
Right, 70s and 80s footage. I mean, stuff from the 90s. Because once you start doing something, there is a principle of unity that you're working through as an artist. So you're like, I don't want to start doing something. I don't want to represent him with archival footage in the 80s and not have him be able to speak in the 90s or 2000s.
Right.
So you're hoping.
サンドイッチ食べた
食べた全部
全部食べた
うんうまかった
今日は白具の先生
そう
あ今日多かった人数
多かったよ40人ぐらいいたんじゃない
あすごいねそしたら、エクササイズできた
うん
スチームは
スパちっちゃいねちっちゃい初めてであんなちっちゃいスパなんて4、5人が入ったらもういっぱいになっちゃうねあれ
お湯の方足浸かる方
お湯の方じゃないスパだよいつも入ってる
あここ小さい
よ
サウナじゃないよね
サウナじゃないスパだよスパ
何人かいたの
いないよ誰も
あ誰もいない
ちっちゃすぎちゃって
で長く入れれたの
20分25分ぐらいだよ
ああ今日は多かったかね比較的に人数は今日はたくさんいた
だから40人ぐらいいたって。
あ
多いよ。
あ。お腹空いてないの今は。
空いてるよ。
あ、もう30日食べてから腹減ったのまた。量少なかったかねあれ。
だって朝食べてないからつくよ。
ああ。
We've all heard the sermon about it being a preservative and things like that in the food industry.
コーヒーいる？
ある。
But
ある？
you talk about Europe. I mean, Europe has, and I'm no history expert, but Europe has a lot of Christian history there. And I know obviously a lot of Paul's, missionary journeys were in some of that region, more of the eastern part. But my point is that Europe has a lot of Christian roots and history. So it isn't as if Europe has always been this secular, God-hating force, a part of the world. But that, to your point, there wasn't and hasn't been a lot of resistance to evil and paganism and godlessness in Europe, maybe some pockets, but over in America, our literal roots from conception of America as we know it as a nation since the colonial era has been Christianity. So it's like rooted in our identity as a people. That doesn't mean everybody's a Christian, but a lot of people sympathize with Christianity even today with the poor direction that we seem to be going in. But that purpose of kind of pushing back the darkness so that, number one, there's more room for the light, but also so that people have an opportunity to recognize God and salvation before they choose a path of destruction, both spiritual and literal. That's a concept that I think a lot of Christians maybe have either lost touch with or don't fully grasp, is that the Great Commission is our primary purpose, but part of the Great Commission is pushing back against darkness and evil. And if you forget that, and if you think it's all about just converting people to the faith, and you forget about pushing back on the darkness, so the darkness is just going to keep encroaching on the light.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one of those key parts of the Great Commission is to call all people to recognize what Christ's words are and the truth that's there. So, I mean, there's a discipleship character to that happens even by our public witness.
Yeah.
That doesn't make somebody a Christian if they decide to live in a more moral way or make a decision that is beneficial to society as a whole. But it is part of that public witness going forward.
Well, and how do we? I think I would go as far to say that what my grandfather Don Bob, and once again we're talking to M.D. Perkins, he's a producer of the film Culture Warrior Don Bob on the Battle for Decency. That URL is culturewarrior.movie. I want to mention that before we keep getting in the weeds here. Culturewarrior.movie. But I think what my grandfather was fighting against, and others in that era, was a wrong understanding of what it means to be a Christian in a culture and a society.
Yeah.
Because the primary problem that my grandfather noticed was that other Christians weren't speaking up, at least in a broad sense, to get enough support and momentum to fight back against these issues.
Yeah.
And there's this false premise that's even around today pretty broadly that Christianity is something that happens in your home, that happens when you go to church, and you might occasionally display your Christianity in public, but probably the opportunities of that are few and far between. But it's almost this like privatization of Christianity, which is not biblical under any circumstance.
Right. So I think part of the issue there, Walker, was, in the early part of the 20th century, there was the fundamentalist movement, which was fighting back against the liberalization of the church that was happening theologically. And what that ended up happening was the trickle-down effect was a lot of Christians just receded from activity either at the denominational level, so you saw a fracturing of the church in a number of different denominations that were coming up, or smaller churches, Bible churches, things like this. But you also saw a resistance to the social gospel message that was part of this main catalyst of the liberalization of the church. So Christians were afraid of being involved lest they be labeled a social gospel person. And so it kind of took some clarifying over the years and some social upheaval and the decline of society as Christians stepped back from those public roles and that public witness for men like Don Wallman to speak up, Thompson and others
Yeah.
to say that no, like we need to be involved, and this isn't dirty, this isn't sinful for you to be talking about these public issues or to be
Right.
talking about politics or all these different things, that this is actually part of our Christian witness. So I think it's the long-term implications of that are still with us in a number of different facets.
Yeah, and a lot of the arguments against public displays of your faith in Christianity and the expression of your convictions in public and applying those to public law, I think a lot of that resistance is not in any way rooted in our national history and our national identity,
Yeah.
such as these arguments against separation of church and state, and you shouldn't bring your religion to the public school, and all these different talking points that cause Christians to kind of flinch and be like, oh, am I being too aggressive in my faith? That's not, when you look at America's founding documents, the founding fathers clearly understood that this nation, if it was going to be good and a beacon of hope and light and liberty to the world, then faith, specifically Christianity, was always going to be an integral part. Otherwise, you don't need a First Amendment, right? You don't need to mention God in our founding documents. But this is what's frustrating, is people that don't like that. It's one thing to say, I don't like that America's a Christian nation, but it's another thing to say America's not a Christian nation. Because I can understand people saying, well, I just don't like how America was set up. Well, go start your own country. But to reject that Christianity is supposed to be integral in our public life is a rejection of not only our biblical mandate, but also our founding fathers' intention on why they set up this land.
Yeah, I mean, part of Don's project was a bit of a reclamation project,
Yeah.
reminding people, calling people back, reminding them of the founding roots. And like you said, I mean, if you don't like it, I mean, go set up your own country. But I mean, Christians have felt intimidated by living in a highly secularized society, and we didn't realize how highly secularized it was until Don Wildman really spoke out about the secular humanism that was infiltrating through the television media.
Yeah.
That it wasn't just that there was sex and violence on TV. You could see that plainly, but what you weren't seeing or understanding necessarily was that there was a worldview component behind it, about how you treat sexuality, how you talk about life, how you talk about religion and its role in society. And so you basically treat everybody like they don't have a religion.
Right.
And so, how many characters did you see on TV that actually were religious? Not very many.
Right. And the producers, when my grandfather would confront them in these panels and interviews, they would admit that. I mean, they would say that basically we don't want to have a lot of Christianity and
Yeah.
morals involved, and we're going to promote sex violence and so and then air quotes, what the consumer wants.
Right.
The consumer is going to want what they've been conditioned to,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And there were a lot of people that didn't approve of the stuff they were pushing on television. MD, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, culturewarrior.movie, and what we just talked about there is kind of a bonus feature. But if you want to watch the entire film, and we've got the Culture Warrior kit, and if you order the kit, it comes with a 2-set DVD, which then has bonus features, which isn't even available on the website. So you have to get that DVD to get those bonus features. But all of that is available at culturewarrior.movie.
Streaming.afa.net has now become AFA Stream, and you can find it at stream.afa.net. You see, we removed the letters ing. Our experts have determined that eliminating those 3 keystrokes, multiplied over hundreds of thousands of AFA Stream visits, could reduce the national debt and maybe increase the gross domestic product. AFA Stream, formerly streaming.afa.net. Improvements to the economy are purely theoretical.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video, When Your Faith is Illegal, by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net.
Hey, 8 Days of Hope family. This is Hannah Fletcher, your communications director. Every year, we are thrilled to see where God moves us as we love and serve those in need across the country country, sometimes on a moment's notice. It can be hard to keep up when our Rapid Response Ministry is serving hurricane victims in one state, while our Safe House Ministry is building a facility of refuge in another. Today, I am excited to share with you about how you can stay up to date on all the ministry is doing through text. That's right, texting. Right now, you can text the word HOPE to 86373 to join our text alerts. You'll be notified anytime God calls us to love and serve the brokenhearted through rebuilding, rapid response, mass feeding, or safe house construction. It's that simple. Text HOPE, that's HOPE, to 86373. We can't wait to share updates with you soon.
Hey friends, it's Jessica Peck, Dr. Nurse Mama, as your 1-minute parenting coach. Is your house known as the hangout house for your kids and their friends? You might say, no, my house isn't big enough, or we aren't set up to entertain, or I'm really not the cool parent, but those aren't good excuses. Kids today need a safe and comfortable place for in-person socialization. Make your house an open invitation anytime. Open your fridge and pantry to help themselves. Don't worry about your house being messy. Have you seen your kids' rooms? They don't care. Be real and engage them in conversation, being authentically awkward. Invite them into your family space to join you in what you're doing. You never know what a lifeline that might be. I'll see you on the Dr. Nurse Mama radio show right here on American Family Radio.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildman.
Welcome back to the program. This is our last segment of the show. If you ever miss an interview or you miss a segment, no worries. It's the 21st century, and we have this thing called podcasting. So we publish the full show, the full program, actually without the breaks. So you get to bypass some of the breaks. We publish the full show in the form of a podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. So type in the name of the show, At the Core, whether you're on an Apple device, Android, Spotify, Roku, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can type in At the Core and click the subscribe button, and the show will be queued up in your library each and every day. We also have the video over on Facebook, At the Core on Facebook, have the video up there, and at stream.afa.net. One more item before we jump to our next guest is the few openings that we have for Israel. So we're going to the Holy Land in February of 2025. So in just a few months here, we're going to Israel. This is one of our makeup trips that we were supposed to take earlier this year, but then the war broke out in late 2023. And so we're going to take a group, about 100 people, to Israel in February of 2025, just coming up in a few months. And if you would like to go, we do have a few spots available. So I believe we have about 6 spots available as of earlier this morning. If you do want to go to Israel with us in February, I know for many of you it's on your bucket list. You've wanted to do this your whole life, and so this might be an opportunity for you. So go to wildmangroup.com and check it out, wildmangroup.com, and check out the dates and the pricing and the availability there at wildmangroup.com. And
指輪はちゃんとついてる？指輪ちゃんとついてる？大丈夫？
ついてるよ。
about going to Israel in light of the conflict that they've been involved in, then you just don't need to go. You don't need to book a flight. You don't need to book a travel. You just don't need to go. But if you understand what's going on over there, you're comfortable with going, you know the risk involved, then we would love for you to join us. And I have 5 little kids. I have a wife. And if I was concerned about my personal safety, I wouldn't go. Israel is a very secure nation, by the way. They take their security very seriously. They don't want any American citizens being injured on Israeli soil. There's always risk involved with travel. There's risk involved in Israel, but they're very good about their security. And our tour agency, they're going to take care of us. They're going to make sure we don't go to places we shouldn't go, and that we're taken care of on the ground over there. So little bit of backgrounder to our trip to Israel in February. Jumping to our next guest, I do want to introduce Dania Andreos, and Dania is a representative with Operation Christmas Child, and here to talk today about packing a shoebox for our audience. So Dania, welcome to the program.
Hello, good afternoon, Walter. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you on. We love talking about Operation Christmas Child. We've been doing this for a long, long time here on American Family Radio. But tell us your story. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll jump into the whole shoebox project.
Yeah, so I'm actually one out of 220 million children that received a shoebox gift since 1993. I come from a country in the Middle East where about 98% of the population were not Christians. So that meant that my family who lived in that part of the world in the Middle East, we were faced with severe persecution because we would follow Jesus and we were sharing our faith with others. I remember many times we received threatening letters giving us the option of stop telling people about Jesus, leave the village, or my family would be killed. You know, and so that was one of those challenges that we faced living there. And the second challenge was poverty. My dad worked hard to provide for us, but it was still not enough to provide school supplies, hygiene items. Sometimes we had to share a toothbrush, and also our daily food. And in the midst of those times, as hard as they were, my parents encouraged me to always pray and bring my needs to God, even when they couldn't afford it for me. So I remember one specific need that my family had that we could not afford, and that was to have a radio so we can listen to a Christian radio station in our own language. But it was so expensive to afford, but we brought it to God in prayer along with all of the needs that we have. And one very special day, we went to church gathering, and there I learned that I was going to receive a gift for the very first time in my life. I was so excited. When I opened the shoebox, I found school supplies, I found hygiene items, and beautiful toys like a Slinky and a Beanie Baby. But the biggest surprise for my family was finding inside the shoebox gift a mini, fully functional radio.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the shoeboxes have impacted so many lives. You mentioned the 200 plus million children that have received them, and the hundreds of thousands that have confessed faith in Christ. I know you guys have the Greatest Journey, which is a discipleship curriculum that you offer to local pastors and local churches. I've been on one of the trips, one of the shoebox delivery trips, and seen it firsthand, the impact that's happening around the world. Talk to our audience about the shoebox itself, right? What are some things to put in it, and the significance of the shoebox? It seems insignificant at face value, but you just talked about the impact it had on your life and your family. So talk about the shoebox and maybe some recommendations on what should go in the shoebox.
I mean, the shoebox gift for me, besides the items that I could not afford, and honestly, it was like a dream receiving them because I had never seen such a thing. So it symbolized God's care and love for me, and especially when I felt rejected by the people around me because of my faith. So that shoebox gift, God used it to ignite my faith and keep going even in the hardest situations. Now, as you mentioned, the Greatest Journey Discipleship Program, it started in 2009, and when children receive shoeboxes, they're invited back to attend this 12-lesson discipleship program. And since it started in 2009, over 15 million children have enrolled, and out of that, 25 million children made the decision to follow Jesus. Now, I don't know how many of you have 50% success rate when you share the gospel, you know, and people accept Jesus, but that's pretty incredible to know, to see that it all starts from what we call a simple shoebox gift, right? It's so simple that you can take any shoebox you have in your closet, or you can also order some from the website. I know Hobby Lobby used to sell some as well. You can buy, but in Dollar Store, and honestly, whatever standard size shoebox you can get your hand into, you can fill it with school supplies, hygiene items, toys, and what we call like a wow item, like a soccer ball maybe, or a doll. I know for me it was a radio, but you don't have to put a radio in every shoebox if you don't want to.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, if you want to, that would be great. But I honestly pray over it and see what the Lord leads you to put inside.